The Animal Farm and the Prince, the two educational books, Compare and Innocence, by George Orwell and Niccolo Machiavelli. Outline: the background of the two books and efforts, a thematic focus and characterization, the similarities and differences between Animal Farm and The Prince. George Orwell was born as a junior government official in 1903. His early experience made him sympathize with the bottom of society, call for the formation of equality and the emancipation of humanity, and had a very important influence on his understanding of totalitarianism. In 1936, after the Spanish Civil War broke out, Orwell became an international volunteer, joining the Republican Army led by the Spanish communists. In 1936, after the Spanish Civil War broke out, Orwell became an international volunteer, joining the Republican Army led by the Spanish communists in supporting of anti-fascist Spanish Civil War. In September 1939, after the outbreak of the Second World War, he went to London and joined the Civil Army for national defense with his wife. He took an active part in all kinds of support work. In 1944, Orwell wrote Animal Farm after the Spanish Civil War and the anti-fascist war, which became a milestone in Orwell's personal writing history. It's better to spend a little bit of time to get some information about the efforts of this book and the background. Before you start reading, I have shared this information. As we know, the story was created by Orwell's experience and some events. Our plot was what he saw and felt. The awesome point is that the whole story, no political propaganda. He just simply wrote it out. He realized that the liberty and equality were limited and short. There was no utopia society in the era. A bunch of animals bring their ideas to break the old order. They shall get out from the cage, but fall into another trap. They still have been cheated, ruined, enslaved. Inequality is the only end that no change. The only one distinguished is in farm men exploit animals. In the animal farm is animal exploit animals. In the end, the even worse situation the men manage them. The most irony is that seven commandments will have eaten by squirrel. In this tragic end, there was only commandment left on that wall. It is the famous quote: "All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others." That was terrible. When equal has the nobility and infernality, then the so-called equal just a self-deception lie, and the liberal aids and freedom just a joke. Poor people is only struggle in the hardship and die in silence. The seven commandments is good, but in most animals, they cannot remember what the seven commandments are, so wouldn't say they understand what commandments really mean. So Snowball simplified it as a phrase: 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. But it provides the condition for the continuous eating of the seven commandments. Animal Farm, our plot is like child's book. All chapter happen events you can exactly find out in the Russian Revolution 1917 to Joseph Stalin started building his personal cult and started Great Purge in an essay. While I write, he said the animal farm was his first conscious attempt to combine political and artistic purpose. George Orwell easy understanding plot and narrative technique make everybody can understand what he wants to say and why. The purpose of this book is not only limited allude to political to telltales to telltale understory. I think it has deeper and complicated allude of any form of totalitarianism and think democracy and justice. The character the characterization of these animals are literally clear. Benjamin's calm and smart, flock of sheep stupid, Molly's vainglory great, stupid just care her own interest. Bugs Bugs indoor surfing and hardworking here are animals clever as same as bugs. In this book, the characterization of animals greedy, selfish, coward, vainglory could obviously see as the dark side of human nature, but the most were meek and silent. In the novel, Napoleon used a series cruel methods made them do not know resist, made them dare not resist, made them where they cannot resist. This is totalitarianism. So the silence seems is the only way to survive under relentless rule. In this novel, Benjamin are the only one clear know what Pig's doing underneath, but he wouldn't say or act, because he knows it wouldn't change anything and even die if he speak that fact out. Throughout the whole novel, Bugs is the hardest one to contribute his own labor to work and build windmill, but in chapter 9, Bugs was exhausted, fell down. Napoleon Collins sent him to vet hospital when Benjamin found the transport has neck market on it. And Animal tried to stop, but failed. Later days, Bugs died. Scholar claimed that was misunderstood. Said it was vet hospital carriage, just didn't change the old name. Animal, Animals trusted him, even though they saw the truth. Then the pigs bought a case of whiskey. With the money from selling books, pigs drink his blood, eat his bone. Irrationally, Brooks still insists to carry blood to build the windmill in the last couple days of his life. Why do animals rebel? This is because they know they are slaves, so they may resist. And the most terrible thing is that the slave does not know they are slaves. The slaves who think themselves master is the most ridiculous and absurd, and it is self-deception generated. Machiavelli was born in Florence, Italy, on May 3, 1496, the son of a lawyer and two sisters. He is an Italian scholar, philosopher, historian, statesman, and diplomat. He was an important figure in the Italian Renaissance and is called the father of modern politics. Machiavelli was born in a troubled time when the papacy was the most powerful material power and one healthy Italian state after another fell to foreign power like French, Spain, and the Holy Roman Empire. In In 1498, he became head of the Second Department of State of the Florentine Republic, responsible for foreign affairs and defense. He was often on foreign missions and met many powerful political leaders, though becoming a captain of the Fifth Council of Florence. It was in this environment that Machiavelli developed the wisdom to analyze political and military events around him and around the world. The Prince was a masterpiece dedicated to Lorenzo de' Medici, Duke of Urbino. Renaissance Italy was a very fragmented country. The hatred between the cities-state made Italy losing its leading position in commerce and trade in the Middle Ages, and it was overrun by Spain, French, Germany, and Austria because it did not form a unified nation-state. Machiavelli advocated the establishment of a unified, centralized nation-state and the end of the separation of Italy. In 1517, Machiavelli was put in prison and tortured, but he was eventually released, and he went into poverty and went into the countryside to start writing The Prince. In The Prince, Machiavelli talked about a series of questions. What is principalities? What kind of principality have? How to acquire it? How to maintain? And why lose it? The book has 26 chapters. In the first 1 to 11 chapters, he discussed how principalities should govern and sustain itself, simplifying that it is easy to have power to protect the country, but difficult to do otherwise, and that the prince should win by crude force and blackmail. In the chapter 12 to 14, he elucidated army is the main base of every principality. The prince needs to have his own army or the institution of military, and the training are the only one profession that the prince have to expert. In 15 and the rest of chapters are the important point of the whole book, a comprehensive proof of Machiavelli's theory of governments. The descriptions within the prince have the general theme of accepting that the aims of prince, such as glory and survival, can justify the use of immoral means to achieve those ends, so that casts the word Machiavellism into as a negative word, but it's most misunderstood of people, because he also points out some of the limitations of evil methods. First, he claimed the maintain stable and purpose is the only legal goal that a country can pursue of, and that the interest of the individual's own expense is not the legal goal, and that the methods of evil cannot be justified. Machiavelli wrote The Prince was dependent on his political experience and great knowledge of his historical. So he likes to give examples to prove his point, especially in the circumstance. The Prince served as a summative speech and suggestion dedicated to Lorenzo de' Medici. The purpose of this book is obvious. It is for a prince that is in the reality, and that is to tell the prince how to properly govern his principality, then sustain and gain more power. Machiavelli often lauded as as the father of modern politicals. That is reasonable. People freely believe political is a branch of ethics before Machiavelli. He successfully separated political and ethics. As the chapter 15, he said, for many have pictured republics and principalities, which in fact have never been known or seen, because how one lives is so far distant from how one ought to live, that he who neglected what is done for what ought to be done, sooner affects his ruin than his preservation. For a man who wished to act entirely up to his professions of virtue soon meets with what destroyed him among so much that is evil. Hence it is necessary for a prince wishing to hold his own to know how to do wrong, and to make use of it or not according to necessity. Therefore, putting on one side imaginary scenes concerning a prince and discussing those which are real. Briefly put, Machiavelli advocates for the necessity of unsentimental realism in assessing the world of man, and by extension for the subject, subjection of of faculty knowledge to the practical exis, 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 exercise with political reality. Also, from one perspective, the starting point of the prince is the nature of human or inherent evil, as Machiavelli in the chapter 17 wrote, because this is to be arrested in general of men, that they are ungrateful, freak, false, cowardly, covetous. Machiavelli separated between the prince's political and ethical conduct, directly denied the general accepted morality. You must know there are two ways of contesting, the one by the rod, the other one by force. The first method is proper to man, the second to beasts. But because the first is frequently not sufficed, it is necessary to have recourse to the second. Therefore, it is necessary for a prince to understand how to avail himself of the beast and the man. Therefore, it is necessary to be a fox to discover the traps, and a lion to terrify the wolves. Princes must be cutting as a fox, and frisk as a lion. It will be success. And the important is how to discuss the character and to be a great pretender and dissemble. The characterization of this whole book are real and kind. His, his characterization are straight up, and it is because he wrote this seems relentless work are real. It is real enough to make people upset and uncomfortable. He gives example whether it is in history or just happening events, analyzes and wrote out the simple and clear general rule. And the general rule through his explain exactly obvious, making us shocked aren't just what he said. It is that we hope he is not telling the truth. We always hope that government can bring beneficial to folks, but Machiavelli advocated that the government must know when the sacrifices are inevitable. but he wrote it out emotionless. It is hard. Ordinary are hard to take. The more upset is he telling the truth are simple and clear. For instance, in the chapter 3, he mentions that across the same country and language. Now, I say that those domains which, when acquired, are added to an ancient state by him who acquires them, are entire of same country and language, or they are not. When they are, it is easy to hold them, especially when they have not been accustomed to self government, and to hold them securely. It is enough to have destroyed the family of the prince who was ruined them, because the two peoples prospecting another since the old conditions and not being unlike in customs will live quietly together. He just wrote out the routine of every country extended territory to change the ruler. He spoke the objective scene. No one will say it out, but please note that it is enough to have destroyed. It is representing Machiavelli opposite any killing innocent people. Unfortunately, reader often ignore some speech like that. The similarities and the differences between Animal Farm and The Prince. Similarity 1. Both books were once banned. Why? Animal Farm and The Prince were once banned in past. In 1559, The Prince was banned in Europe. Catholics and Protestants united against Machiavelli. This was continued into the 19th century, and the Animal Farm were banned in Soviet Union, Cuba, and China. George Orwell's experience made him become a democratic socialist, so he wouldn't doubt the validity of socialism. And this novel not just irony at the time the Soviet Union pretended as a socialist country, but it actually is horrible. It is doubt and irony all the protagonists. At the same time, worrying people need to prevent it happening again. The prince were abandoned in Europe. The mainstream point think it is evil and has made people shock points. Even set it in its own historical background are still overdue and unacceptable, and it is why the term Machiavellism creates and become into a negative word. And it described as to achieve goals can do everything, and the hypocritical politicals of seems benevolent but actually cruelty. Yeah, as ordinary, we are hard to take that. But as I have shown previous slides, they have limits. This book has good purpose, some good suggestions for the prince and help Prince unity Italy with the invader. This book is very easy to some people with ulterior motives use as an excuse to do something evil. That is why the prince was once banned. As we know, in the animal form, Napoleon is a master of playing political tricky. He is he is a senator and heartless and cruel. When the rebellion ended, he instead took night puppies and discredited culture them as his own favorite power. Then, when the opportunity came, he nearly killed Snowball, but Snowball escaped and never came back. Then he captured 50 subordinates to make him control the farm freely. Then got more and more privilege and become a dictator. No power and no plan. Snowball nearly killed by Napoleon. In the prince, I'll mention 2 points. First, first one, I conclude, therefore, that no principality is secure without having its own force. Quote from chapter 17. Arthur, when they depend upon their own resources and can employ force, they seldom fail. Hence it comes that all armed prophets have been victorious, and all unarmed prophets have been destroyed. This will, from a certain angle, and um, an animal from experience mean is the same. If you no power, no plan, you will be you will be destroyed by others. Similarity 3. They have shown similar ideas or concepts. Orwell and Machiavelli present a similar describe of the non-ruling class. He said, men are so simple and so much inclined open to open in the Middle East that a deceiver will never lay victimized for his deception. Machiavelli presented the people as simple minds, easy led, and easy tricked. Orwell presented this idea over and over in animal form. A best example is the sheep on the farm. They live by the simple idea that follows good to looks bad. Then training by squirrel become follows good to looks better. And they always stop and spoil it on another animal's voice. Then they got no chance to protest. On this point, Owen are corresponding with Machiavelli. The usage of fear in 2 books. In the Animal Farm, Chapter 5, Napoleon used his guard, guard dogs chasing Snowball and kicked him out from the farm. All animals were shocked and dare not move. This is the first time using fear. The second time is he started the purge of rebels. In The Prince, Chapter 17, Arthur asked a question, whether it would be better to be loved than feared, or feared than loved, and his answer is wished to be both. But because it is difficult to unite them in one person, it is much safer to be feared than loved. When of the two, either must be dispensed with. This is quote, but Machiavelli not encourage tyranny. Instantly said, nevertheless, a prince ought to inspire fear is much a way that they have the same purpose, stable their own region. Difference 1. The two main characters of the 2 books, even though they were called despot. The Prince isn't a novel like Animal Farm. It is formed by short or long essay, but it still have the main character in there. Such a Borgia can count as an excellent example as a ruler. Machiavelli in this book compliment him a lot. This is called from book. With all the action of the Duke of Recalled, I do not know how to blame him, but rather it appears to be, as I have said, that I ought to offer him for imitation to all those who, by the fortune or the arms of others, are raised to government. and can, cannot find a more lively example than the action of this man. Napoleon and Sartre Borgia are different, even though they will hold power and control crew. But in animal form, Napoleon are highly corrupt, always want to get more and more privilege, and figure how to exploit it for animals. Totally just think himself or not think for animals will be. So in the end, that all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. Just making people laugh out loud joke and an excuse of his courage. In The Prince, Chapter 7, Machiavelli wrote a lot of words about what had Cesare done and how did he get the Romagna. Cesare was known as a dangerous butcher. He had done a lot of grim and bloody things, but he built his regime solid and restored the social order. When the Duke occupied the Romagna, he found they were masked and under a weak ruler. So here was his action. He promoted he promoted Miss Romeo, Romeo the swift and cool man, to whom he gave the fullest power. This man in a short time restored peace and unity with the great greatest success. Then Cheshire thinks give him too much authority, and he sure it will make hate. And because he knew that the past security had caused some hatred against himself, so to clear himself in the minds of the people and gain them entirely to himself, he desired to show that if any cruelty had been practiced, it had not originated with him, but in the natural sternness of the minister. So in the morning he excused him. That made people satisfied and dismayed. Also, there is an strange Machiavelli wrote in chapter 15. He need not make himself uneasy at incurring a reproach, for those vices without which the state can only be saved with difficulty. For if everything is considered carefully, it will be found that something which looks looks like virtue, if followed, would be his ruin, while something else, which looks like wise, yet followed bring him security and prosperity. Difference 2. The two books are facing different audiences. Animal Farm taught us when the rebellion make it out. Build a new regime is a very difficult process, and when no supervisory organ to supervise and restrain them, it will gradually corrupt and swell, because that is nature of human. Man is by nature evil. It is a novel of totalitarianism in the name of socialism, not only an solution to add irony of the Soviet Union on the Stalin, but also a warning to the world against totalitarianism. The Prince is a dedicated to the Prince of a suggestion. This is meaning of a better place. Machiavelli, after praising had nothing. He was forced to retreat countryside. Then he started writing the Prince in 1513. It tends to dedicate to the Prince. Hope he can unify Italy and perhaps can let him return to the political field, regain office. So his audience just for Italy. The book is to telling the prince how to govern, but did not say how to use power, and the politicals are just means to govern the country. So that future generation how to apply the book knowledge to govern the country, it is beyond the scope of his care. No luck and the situation is unlike to success. Every success cannot be copied. The end. Thank you.